The only six-time Race Across America champion, Christoph Strasser, joins us for a fun and informative episode to discuss RAAM in full detail, one section at a time, through each condition and every state of mind. Christoph has a wealth of experience and deep insights to share with us through his 9 RAAM participations, including 2 DNFs and countless challenges and successes. There's plenty of beautiful photographs to go along with his adventures too, so if you plan to race or crew for RAAM, then this episode is for you. And be sure to check out our previous session with Christoph in episode 37 if you'd like to get even more knowledge and inspiration straight from the ultra cycling legend himself. I'm your host, Justin Tu. Let's roll. Hey Ultra family, Justin Tu here, your host of the Ultra Cycling Show. Thanks for tuning in to today's extraordinary episode with our guest again, Christoph Strasser. Of course, we all know him as the Race Across America champ, having won 6 times out of the 9 RAAM participations that he was involved with. Of course, if you missed the first episode with him, definitely check it out. It was episode 37, where we got a whirlwind tour of who Christoph is, the races that he's competed in, all of his successes, including his world records. It was very fascinating, and there was a lot of knowledge and wisdom that he candidly shared, so don't miss it if you're serious about your ultra cycling. So Christoph, without further ado, you don't need any further introduction. Thank you for joining me on the show again.
Hi, Justin. Hello again. I'm very excited about our second episode.
Yes, me as well. It's such a pleasure to be able to have another episode with you in English. I know you're very busy and you do a lot in German as well. And I know all your German fans there in Europe are very excited and thankful for that. And so we thank you for taking the time again. Now, we've kind of discussed what we'd like to do for a second episode, and we thought, well, it would be so cool, of course, as the current RAAM champion, 6-time RAAM winner, only one, to discuss the Race Across America in detail. Our first episode together was really a great tour of your whole career. Of course, you started at a very young age, and you're still very young at 38 years of age. But to dive into the Race Across America and to get into the mind of the champion himself, to understand as we go through the RAAM route, what you're thinking, how you're feeling, what's keeping you going. So before we get into that, of course, I have put together another sprint round of questions to start with in a fun way, but I'd like to show folks some of what we'll be covering. So of course, a lot of great photos that you sent through, and you've had incredible photographers along the journey. So I'm really glad that you were able to capture all these memories. And I'm sure even for you looking back at these photos, how does that make you feel?
Yeah, for me, it's just incredible because it's such a long time of my life. I have been doing Race Across America and 9 participations. There are so many memories, and if today I was just thinking about how much time I have spent in the country of USA for doing Race Across America. And when I put all the weeks and months together, 9 times the race. Before each race, I've been there for 2 weeks before the race for getting used to the hot weather. So altogether, it's 9 months of my life I have been in America for RAAM, and 3 more weeks because of Borrego Springs Time Trial Championships and 1 training camp. So wow. It was 10 months altogether.
Wow, that's amazing. Over 9 months. That's so cool. Sheesh, so you're pretty much on your way to becoming an American, I think.
That's much more complicated, but it's like a second place where I like to be.
Wow, that's pretty cool. Now, my son is going to be 9 months old in 3 days' time. So it just makes me think. And for him, he was actually in his mother's womb for the full 9-month term. before he was born. So I just think, okay, you were here in America for 9 months. It's almost like you were birthed into ultra cycling and becoming the Race Across America champion, which is really fascinating. And of course, that's why you have so much experience. I mean, just doing the Race Across America one time for any person in any period of their life, if they're living 80, 90 years old, would be a huge achievement, huge accomplishment, probably the time of their life. And of course, just a game changer and a life changer for themselves. So having participated 9 times, I could just imagine all the memories that you have. And so that's why I'm thankful. In the last episode, we touched on some of those memories, some of the even challenges. You did DNF twice, 2015 being the year that I was also there. In fact, the photo behind me where I have my very aerodynamic setup with my jersey unzipped. Everyone loved that when you pointed it out. So thank you for that humor. And so it's going to be nice to really dive deep, and even just for a keepsake and for our memory in the future, for others to refer back to. Of course, you are the only 6-time RAAM champion. But previous to you, one of your idols, Jure Robic, he was the 5-time Race Across America champion. And so this is a big deal, and I know that there's a lot to learn from you. And of course, we will go into discussing RAAM in full detail. Here's their website, raceacrossamerica.org, for those who are interested in learning more and perhaps signing up for 2021. Hopefully, it'll be on. Of course, we will be discussing the route, really dissecting that state by state and section by section. And I've even pulled up, for the fun of it, the Race Across America. This was for 2020. The route book. Now, some who have not done RAAM or participated or been a crew member or something like that would find this interesting. I mean, if you think of a ride with GPS or something like that, where it has your route there, turn-by-turn instructions, just imagine 3,000 miles of that. That is why you definitely need a good crew who's either rested well enough or drinking enough coffee to keep you on track, because you definitely don't want to take a 20-mile detour on this race. So, Christoph, let's have some fun with a quick sprint round of questions. Of course, a series of questions to get to know you more in a fun way. And you can just answer with a few sentences here. First one, of course, we can always talk about food. I'm wondering, what are your favorite meals at each meal each day? So first one is breakfast. What is your favorite breakfast meal?
It depends. When I train, before training, I like Quaker oats, oatmeal
Oh, yeah.
with some fruits. And if I do not train, I don't have a lot of breakfast, but maybe something sweet.
Cool. Yeah, no, I love oatmeal too. I'm a daily oatmeal consumer myself. I love blueberries and bananas in mine. What are your favorite fruits in your oatmeal?
Yeah, all kind of fruit, depends on the time of the year. Apples because apples are growing in Austria, and
Yes.
yeah, wild berries, strawberries, and something that's great.
That's delicious. And in our last episode, we were talking about farmer Christoph. Any fruits in your garden?
Apples and raspberries.
Ah, delicious. Wow. Okay. So next time when we can come visit you in Austria, you'll have to prepare us a fresh bowl of Christoph oatmeal.
Okay.
All right. How about for lunch? What's your favorite lunch meal?
My favorite lunch, maybe I will have it while riding the bike. So it's just something very simple, like an energy bar, like an Ensure, or maybe something I can buy while riding when I ride by a gas station or something.
Yes.
Yeah, but I do not have a lot of food during the day. I have breakfast and lunch.
Ah, okay. Interesting. So how about for dinner?
Yeah, dinner. The most important thing is it has to be a lot. I definitely like a high quality piece of steak or fish. Yeah, fish is maybe my favorite. So like a tuna fillet or something with apples or with potatoes and salad.
Oh, that sounds delicious. All right. Looking forward to a full day of meals with Christoph. Now, do you prepare them or does Sabina prepare them for you?
Yeah, she does it much more often, but sometimes I'm cooking on my own, of course. But in fact, we are always cooking, so we do not go out to a restaurant very often
Mm,
or buy something to eat. We just go to the supermarket and have our own kitchen and we cook on our own because it's much more healthy. And the
mm.
big problem is when I go to a restaurant, it's always too less. So when I leave the restaurant, I'm hungry, and that's the reason
Yeah.
why going out for a restaurant doesn't make a lot of fun.
Wow. Yeah, that's very interesting. You'll have to send us a photo one day of one of your dinner meals so we could see how much food we're talking about. That'll be very interesting. Okay, now talking about, say, on the bike, do you have a preferred cadence or range that you prefer pedaling in?
Yes, it's very low. So I'm
Hmm.
always using heavy gears. I do not feel comfortable with cadence like 85 or 90.
Hmm.
That's making me tired. That's making stress to my mind and to my body. The favorite cadence is 70, 75.
Hmm,
And
fascinating.
in a long distance bike race, sometimes it even gets lower because when you're
Hmm.
tired, it's very hard to keep up a high cadence.
Hmm.
I've discussed it with my coach, and he says towards the end of the race, I'm getting much more time out of the saddle. And at the beginning of the
Hmm.
race, I try to focus to stay in the aero position.
Hmm.
But of course, the aero position is a bit more exhausting for your upper body and for everything, for your neck. So
Right.
when the race gets longer and longer, I'm getting out of the aero position a bit more and in the end of the race, even out of the saddle because you have pain and getting out of the saddle is a bit of relief.
Yeah, fascinating. All right, so it seems
That's
like at least the first half, it's a lot of arrow as much as possible, and the second half, it's kind of whatever is going to work and feel comfortable to make it to the end.
yes.
Yeah.
You always should think that being in the aero position is the best thing, but it's to practice it over days and days. It gets really tough in the end.
Yeah, I could only imagine. Don't know how you even do it for one day. Of course, you have done the 24-hour records, both indoor and outdoor, so you're quite used to that, even outside of the race across America. Of course, you have competed in many other ultra events, including the race around Ireland, race around Slovenia, and others, even there in Austria. Now, I'm curious, what do you look forward to most in the off season? You just concluded your off season a short while ago, a couple of weeks ago, I think now. What do you look forward to the most? Sleeping, eating, not biking, something else?
Yeah, going out for a drink with friends in the evening.
uh,
Yeah, in the last few weeks that was not possible because of the general situation and the lockdowns. But yeah, that's my favorite thing. Of course, I eat a bit more and I sleep a bit longer, but yeah, having more time to spend with friends is the best thing in the off season.
yeah, that sounds great. Nice way to recharge, get some encouragement, and have some fun. Okay, now short question. Do you ride on Zwift or anything else like that? Any virtual worlds?
Yeah, last year I've tried Swift,
Hmm.
but I was so bored after one session. I cannot understand why people are so excited about it. I think it's a great tool if you can get more motivation from Swift, then it's great. But for me personally, I, I enjoy much more when I look YouTube videos of musicians, live concerts,
Hmm.
um, live sports like tennis or skiing or something. Gives me more motivation than riding on Swift.
Wow, fascinating. All right. So there is stuff that keeps you preoccupied in your pain cave. That's nice. Is there another sport that is your favorite other than bicycling?
Yeah, definitely tennis, but I've never played tennis in my life. But I'm just
Huh.
a fan. I enjoy watching the Grand Slam tournaments, but yeah, it's just great to see how the big players of the sports, when they face each other, and you see the mental ups and downs, and when one player is strong and the other one is just getting more and more nervous, and a few minutes later it changes back. So it's really
fascinating.
Yeah, you can see the mental aspect of the sport in tennis.
Yeah, pretty cool. All right. So once you retire from ultra cycling, once you've completed your 10th RAAM victory, then we'll see you in some tennis shorts out on the courts.
I do not think so, but maybe in the crowd watching.
Right. Cool. All right. Okay. Now, I want to see what is the most difficult parts of the Race Across America for you and ultra riding in general. So a few different topics here. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being, extremely difficult, how difficult is it for you to go to sleep? I mean, you don't sleep a whole lot, but on a scale of 1 to 10, how difficult is it, or how easy is it to go to sleep?
I think it's a 1. It's very easy because when you just sleep for 5, 6, or 7 hours in the whole race, you're so tired that you have to fight against falling asleep most of the time. So if you finally get the chance to get some sleep, and your crew prepares a sleep break for you, then you just lay down and fall asleep immediately.
Right.
And if you do not fall asleep immediately, there is no reason to stop for a sleep break. Then you should go on.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think we could all relate with that. Now, we have had a couple guests on the show, not just for the Race Across America, but just in general, where they sometimes have difficulty sleeping for whatever reason. Now, that's a very tough problem to have when you're exhausted. But generally, it is true that you're so exhausted that, I mean, even on the bike, you're already sleeping, let alone when you're sitting down, before your head even hits the pillow or the backrest of the seat, you're already asleep. Okay, now how about waking up for you? How difficult is it for you to wake up?
That's very tough. I think in the first half of Race Across America, it's five points. In the first 2 or 3 nights, I do not need to be waked up because I wake up myself, and even after a power nap of 20 minutes, I have no problems getting on the bike again. But in the second half of the race, it's a 10. It's one of the most difficult things and one of the most painful and tough things. You fall asleep very soon, and then getting up again, getting on the bike again, it's horrible sometimes, because you have much more pain than before going to sleep, because if your muscles cool down a little bit, and then you have to get going again, you need some time to find the rhythm again. You're confused in your mind, you are tired, you don't know what's going on around you. So it really takes some time after a sleep break to find the rhythm again. But it's in all my participation, it has been the same. So the thing is, even when you experience it more often, it does not get easier from one time to the other. You just find ways to handle it, and you know that finally it's going better again. It's getting better again in a few minutes or hours, but it's not getting easier.
Yeah, it's so true. One of the extremely difficult parts of RAAM, of course, for those who are observing and spectating online or even in person, they see the nice photos in the daytime. They see, all the glory and the finish line. But what they don't realize is those very dark moments there in the witching hours or whenever it is. And when you're there just by yourself, struggling to even just wake up and get back on the bike. And so it's very true. And it even happens to the champion himself. Okay, now how about eating a lot? You have to eat so much every day. Now, you mostly do ensure, I'm sure maybe here and there you might have a little small snack of something else. But how difficult is it for you each day and each sip to drink on a scale of 1 to 10?
That's not, for me, it's not difficult. It's maybe It's 2 points, so it's quite easy to get enough calories, because I found a way to to fuel myself without getting sick or something. But on the other hand, it's really difficult not to drink too much, especially in the first 2 days when it's very hot, when you go to the desert, when you cross Arizona. You would like to drink much more because you're so thirsty. You're maybe a bit dehydrated, but we have our plan, our nutrition plan. And like I've told you last time, drinking too much or drinking plain water is not good. And that's difficult for me, just to get a little bit of drink every half an hour, but I would like to have much more. And this is something where the crew is so important. Also in the sleep breaks, getting on the bike again after a sleep break is really tough, but a good crew can support you so much. They are keeping you in a high spirit. They are helping you with getting the clothes on and everything, and also in nutrition. It's the responsibility of the crew to to get your nutrition when you need it.
Yeah, very true. And of course, you have had a very excellent crews, not just excellent photographers. And on the subject of sleep, now these ones you're not sleeping, but it is at night. And there are great photos, very creative. But also, it's very interesting to just visualize and to try to see how tired you may look, even just looking at your eyes. Now, this photo was from your 2018 RAAM, so just 2 years ago. Time station 41. There's 55 time stations. So this is very much towards the end of the race across America. And so it's very interesting just to see what somebody looks like and the champion after racing so hard and so long through all the conditions and all the states, what that looks like. So then the next question for you, Christoph, is how difficult on a scale of 1 to 10 is it for you to stay positive on the bike? You know, when things get difficult, whether it's the conditions, maybe it's so hot, maybe it's so cold, maybe you just have a lot of pain physically, maybe you're having trouble falling asleep, or rather, you're having trouble staying awake. How difficult is it for you to stay positive throughout the race?
That's a tough question. I think it's 6 points out of 10. But even if I do not stay positive, I have to ride on. So in the end, it doesn't really matter that much, because if you're not in a good mud, you still have to go on. It's not a reason for slowing down, because it's not realistic to think that you can have high spirits and good motivation and positive thoughts all the race. That's never going to happen. There will always be some negative thoughts in your mind, and some bad times and some painful times. And it's the only realistic thing is you will have good and bad times. So bad times are part of the game.
That's very fascinating. Here's a photo from one of your very first RAMs, 2009. And it seems like it is a challenging instance here, challenging moment, like you said. But you
Yes,
have to keep pressing on.
that was just a few miles before we had to stop and DNF the race. You see in my face, it was already there was swollen. My face there was swelling in my face. And of course, in the last hours of that race, 2009, it was my first race across America. I was a rookie, and I had very high motivation, of course, and I was hoping for a good finish. And then you realize that you're getting seriously ill, not just little bit pain here and there, but you're seriously ill. And I had fever, and I had a cough and everything. My lungs were ill. So I knew that it's gonna be over very soon. And then of course it's not possible anymore to have a good spirit.
Wow, difficult. Here's another one. Now, this one is from 2012. this is just the second day. So you're going through the heat of somewhere, Arizona, Utah, I'd imagine. And you could see, of course, your crew is helping you to cool down. Tell me about this kind of photo.
That was the race 2012. I was the defending champion, so I was hoping for another, very good race and maybe for winning again. And in that picture, I was, I think, third, fourth, or fifth position, so I was not leading. Rita Schoch, who will win the race finally, was in the lead, and I had really struggling with the heat. It was very hot. I had to stop for a few times. I was vomiting one time, and I was really, fighting the hot temperatures. And when you're hoping for a good result, and you're on the in the results, it was, I think, time station 6 or 7 or something. I was not so good as I was hoping for. You get some frustration. That was a challenging moment, but one day later, I was feeling much better again, and at the halfway point of the race, I was able to catch the leader, Rita Schoch, and we had a head-to-head race until the finish.
Wow, that's some exciting stuff, Christoph. And that just makes me think of another episode that we had with the WUCA secretary, actually, Jeffrey Ritter of the World Ultra Cycling Association. Now, he's a recumbent rider, episode 32, and he was talking about how, he has to learn and accept that it's okay to suffer. And it sounds like that's what you're saying as well, that even when you're feeling the pain mentally, physically, when you're going through a tough time, you have to just accept that, embrace that, and keep pushing on, knowing that, look, that is a regular part of ultra racing. But at the same time, as you discussed in that first photo from 2009, you also have to know when it becomes a safety risk to your life, literally, and it could get too extreme, and you do have to stop for your own safety and perhaps even for the crew's safety. So having an excellent crew, but also being disciplined yourself is very important for ultra racers, and remembering that you can always come back the next year. And so I think you have gotten a lot of that experience and understand that very well. So thank you for sharing that knowledge with us. Okay, now another question I have: what percentage of your training is solo, just by yourself, versus riding with maybe a friend or riding with a group?
Unfortunately, I think 90% or maybe 95% of my training is solo, because during the week, during the day, not a lot of bike friends have enough time to come with me. In the winter time, a lot of training is indoor. So I enjoy riding together, but it happens on the weekend maybe, or on the weekend in every 2 weeks. And during the week, I'm riding alone. I have to. I enjoy riding with other people, but it's not possible too often.
Right. Well, I'm glad you do have Federer to be there with you as you watch him play tennis. But it is difficult. But of course, you are a solo racer, and that's what you're a champion for. And so it does make sense that, of course, you have a lot of that experience riding alone. But glad you are able to, on occasion, get a ride in with others. I know it is motivating and just fun also to explore together. Now, talking about doing something together, who would be your dream team partner for the Race Across America? If you were doing a two-person team, who would you want to be on your team? Anyone. Well, somebody that's alive today.
Wow, that's difficult. It depends on what is the goal. Do we want to go for a very fast winner's time, or just for enjoying the adventure? If we go for a race win, I would pick maybe Ralph de Seviscourt from Luxembourg, because he is so fast. He's so fast. He's really great, but I think he could improve a little bit on his management with sleeping breaks, so he has a bit more off the bike time than others. So he's on the bike super fast, but he could cut off his time when he leaves the bike. So yeah, I think at the moment he's one of the fastest.
Yes, geez, that would be some very exciting racing if we ever saw that one. I wonder how fast you two would be able to cross the country. I mean, you finish as fast as probably, I don't know, maybe some of the slower teams or, two-person teams. I don't know, four-person teams. But man, with the both of you, I wonder how quickly that would be. We wouldn't even have enough time to blink our eyes and you'd be at the finish line already.
Yeah, it would be exciting. Maybe in a few years, I have to ask him.
Yeah. No, that would be cool. Keep us posted. We'll look forward to having you both on the show. Well, I know for next year, 2021, I believe Chris Hopkinson and Marco Ballo will actually be competing as a two-person relay team. And man, that would have been really exciting if we had you two pairs of racers out there in the two-person team.
Wow.
Now, Jonathan Moore, he had a question. And he watched the last episode and he was wondering, will you be attending RAAM 2021?
I'm not sure at the moment. The problem is that you have, especially when you're coming from Europe, you have to do a lot of planning. You have to get your crew together. Everybody on the crew has to take 2 weeks off his job, and you have to book the flights and the camper van and everything. So at the moment, you cannot make plans for summer because of the situation on the whole world of the Corona situation. I hope that Race Across America will take place, of course, but from Europe, you must make the decision now in December or maybe January or at least February. But I'm not very optimistic that we can make the decision now because we do not know what is going to happen in summer.
Yes.
So I'm not sure at the moment.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate, of course. Of course, for every sport and all around the world, not just ultra cycling. We do miss you out here, but we do look forward to the time when you are able to come back, and perhaps it will be with Ralph. Okay, so Christoph, another question we had here. I know you were chatting on Facebook with a couple of the audience. So for those who are interested in having a conversation with you through Facebook or Instagram, Fabio Biasiolo and Adam Ashwell were wondering about your functional threshold power, FTP, and also your power to weight ratio. Perhaps it might be interesting to know, perhaps now, but I know you are at the beginning of your next season of training, but perhaps even just generally for the last few Race Across Americas when you're in your best form.
Yeah, in the best form in spring and in early summer, it's about 400 to 410 or maybe 420 watts. And my body weight is about 78, 79 kilograms. So it's I think 5.1, 5.2 watts per kilogram.
Wow, those are some amazing numbers.
But yeah, of course there are riders who have much higher FTP, but the important question is how long are you able to hold 70, 80, 90% of your FTP? Because even if you have a very high FTP, you can maybe go extremely fast for 1 hour, but slow down in the second, third hour. But ultra cycling, you need, during the race, I try to catch something between 60 and 70% of FTP. And the best thing is when you're able to hold that for 24-hour period. When you, for example, do a 24-hour race, and that's the difficult thing.
Yeah, it's so true. But of course, you mastered that and have done that so well. Not only are you a strong rider and have a high FTP, but you're also able to sustain a very high percentage of that FTP through, well, in your Race Across America, say on average on an 8-day time frame, which is very impressive. You've also done, of course, the 24-hour records. I know one of the most difficult things, or the most difficult thing you've done, is on the indoor velodrome. And we talked about that in the last episode. So, again, episode 37, for those who would like to learn more about that. Now, on the shorter end of things, do you ever compete or participate in any shorter road races, perhaps even just as a training or a time trial or something like that?
Yes, I do, but not too often. But sometimes I do, especially in time trials. That's because it's for my training motivation. When you just have one big race or two big races in the year, it's a bit more difficult to get enough motivation. But when there are some smaller races here and there, it's good for your training spirit. So time trials between half an hour and 1 hour, I really like them, and I like to compete against the time trial specialists, the really fast guys in time trialing. And when I'm able to be on the podium or to be in the top 10 in an amateur race of time trial, I'm very happy.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Must be fun. Definitely need to stay motivated. That's always challenging. Now, we were talking about the aero position earlier. We're talking about time trials now. Some nice photos here. This one is on day 4, 2013, in your well-known TT position on your Shiv, specialized Shiv. Looking good.
Riding through Kansas is always a very special experience.
Yeah. Now, how do you fare in the winds in Kansas? If there's a headwind or there's a crosswind, does that dampen your spirit at all, or are you able to just power through that and doesn't bother you at all?
To be honest, it's not stressing me that much. I think there are other people who have much more problems because I'm not so a lightweight guy. But that's the reason why it isn't a big problem for me riding in the wind. And most of the time in Kansas, the wind comes from the right side. It comes from the south, right, and not directly headwind. And the biggest problem for me riding in tough winds is the noise, because it's so loud. You have that sound in your ears all the time. You're not able to talk to anybody. You're not able to listen to music. It's just loud and loud and loud. The wind. That's what's frustrating me most.
Oh, that's a very interesting answer. Haven't gotten that one before, but it is actually very true. It is very disturbing, and when you can't communicate as well with your team, that's difficult. And if you can't do things to keep your mind busy, including music, that also makes it a challenge. Very interesting. Now, a couple other shorter questions before we get into the RAAM route. Prince Kalako is wondering about cleat position. So forefoot or the midfoot. Do you have a preference and any recommendation for ultra long endurance races?
I do not have recommendations because I think it's very individual, like your position on the bike. But I use the ordinary forefoot position, but I move the cleats to the range back on the shoe. So my shoe is a bit more in front of the pedal, but it's not a midfoot position. It's a front forefoot position.
Ah, okay. Interesting. Very fascinating.
I like to move my saddle forward. So it's more like a triathlon position maybe than a road bike position, especially on time trial bike.
Yeah. Very interesting. Now, during the Race Across America, do you ever come out of your shoes or your clipped-on shoes with cleats to wear regular, running shoes, tennis shoes, or anything like that? Do you ever change that?
No, there is no reason for that. I just have 3 pairs of shoes. When it's raining very strong and everything is wet, you have to get some dry shoes. And sometimes when it's just a short break, 20 minutes of a power nap, it's I stay in the shoes. I do not take them off. I just take them off when it's the 1 hour sleep break in the night.
Oh, wow. Very interesting.
Yeah, you have to take care of every second. No, yeah, no time should be wasted with getting your shoes on and off when it's not necessary.
Right, right, right. Yeah, fascinating. But during those times when, okay, when you're having your power nap, I mean, you're out, you're so tired, so I guess you don't think anything of it. And any other times that you stop, you're going very quickly. It's like a NASCAR pit stop. So I suppose you don't really have time to think or worry about how your feet might be feeling and how it might feel nice to take off your shoes and maybe be in a pair of sandals for a few minutes because that never happens for you.
Yeah, that's true. I found out that one of my personal challenges is getting numb fingers. So the nerves in the fingers here from holding the aero bar
Mm,
or just also in the time trial position, all the nerves here, they get some pressure.
mm,
So I often have problems with my fingers, but I never have problems with my feet and my toes.
mm,
And when I talk to other racers, some other racers, they do not have problems in their hands, but in their toes and feet. So it's individual again. And if your toes are painful, then of course it's a good idea to take off the shoes sometimes.
yeah, very fascinating. Here's another great photo. This one is Time Station 2, just past that or on the way. Of course, we're going through the sand dunes here, the Imperial Sand Dunes. So this is towards the beginning of the ride, but now the photo you can't really tell. I'm sure it must be quite warm. I mean, in the 90 degrees Fahrenheit or perhaps even in the hundreds already at this point. And we could see your position. As you mentioned, you do have that forward seating position like a triathlon bike. And in fact, the Shiv is a very popular triathlon bike, in fact. And of course, very aggressive position. Aero bars are not raised up at all. It's as aggressive as you can get. And of course, as you were mentioning, your cleats, you move them on the furthest back position at the front. Now, sometimes going through the heat, people will get things like hot foot. Has that ever happened to you?
Just a little bit, but it was not such a big problem. And it is something you can, if you turn your focus to other things and don't give attention to the pain in your soles, in your feet. It's nothing which really you can still go on even if you have your hot foot and pain in your feet. It would be different, for example, if your knees are a problem and if you have pain in your knee and that would maybe keep you from riding. But pain in the feet is you can manage it mentally.
Yeah, so true. Now, talking about other issues, here, this is 2015. Tell us about what's happening in this image.
Yeah, that was one of my toughest moments in RAAM at all. It was on top of Kuchara Pass, which is the third of the three big Rocky Mountain passes. You have the Wolf Creek Pass, which is the highest one. Then you have the La Veta Pass, which is the easy one of these three. And then that's Kuchara Pass. And this is the steepest and for me the toughest. And that was when I got heavy problems in my lungs and breathing was just nearly impossible. I couldn't breathe anymore, take no deep breath anymore. And I was swelling in my face, in my feet, in my legs and everywhere. So I had too much water inside my body. I was gaining weight and we had to stop on top of Kuchara Pass and wait for 20 or 30 minutes to get so that I was able to do the downhill because I was in such a bad condition. The saturation of oxygen in my blood was very low. So I was afraid of crashing in the downhill or falling asleep or just collapsing. So we had to
Oh,
stop on the top of the hill and wait for a few minutes. And then one day later, we had to accept that the race is over. And that was the year of my second DNF.
wow, amazing. Yeah, it's incredible. And even after so many years since your first one, and after so many victories, that circumstances can happen. And again, you have to take your safety and health into consideration. And so even the very best ultra cyclist, Christoph Strasser, even has to make those difficult decisions. But of course, you tried to take a short break, you kept going, you even kept pushing through, but a day later you did have to admit that, okay, I have to come back again. And of course you did. And now you have, of course, achieved your sixth RAAM victory, and there will be many more still to come, I believe. Okay, two other questions here, and then I want to turn our attention to the RAAM route and to learn more about each state. Tell us something you think most people don't know about you.
I'm not addicted to cycling at all.
Ah,
So I
ah,
like riding my bike. I like training. I like racing, but I also like my off time without training, going on holidays, going in summer, going for a swim, having an easy time. And a lot of people think that ultra cyclists are addicted. They do not feel comfortable when not on the bike, but that's not true. I can enjoy life without bike as well.
hmm. Yeah, that's very fascinating. And thanks for sharing that one. Didn't know that about you. And I think for a lot of ultra cyclists, they just love biking. They can't stop doing it. They do it with their friends. They live, move, breathe. They're sleeping and they're biking in their dreams. Nice to know that even somebody like yourself can have a well-balanced life and still enjoy other things. Of course, you are an author of your book, Strasser's Road, and you are a keynote speaker at many venues. So you do keep yourself very busy. Now, final question I have for you, Christoph, looking here at your Instagram and in other areas, where does the nickname Straps come from? Tell us about that.
It just comes from my second name. So my family name Strasser and Straps was I don't know, some of my school friends finally came up with that, and all the other friends liked it. And so I have to carry that name for more than 25 years now.
Oh, interesting.
The fun thing is,
Yeah.
in the German language, that word even means, I'm not sure how to explain it. It's a sexy outfit of women,
Interesting.
it's when it's something like leg warmers,
Oh, like pantyhose.
Yes. And that's funny because when you ride a bike a lot, you have the tan lines on your legs.
Right.
And
Yeah, yeah.
it looks a bit similar than the women outfit.
That's hilarious. So people make fun with you. Your friends like joking about that.
Yeah.
Now, interestingly enough, episode 34, we had young 17-year-old Adam Ashwell, who you did meet, Fort Scott, Kansas. His family runs that time station. Now he has picked up ultra cycling, and you have, of course, inspired him through all the years. He was such a young boy when he first met you. Now he's 17 years old, doing different ultra races, and I'm sure has great ambitions. So, it's I know he'll be excited to hear more from you. But also, I think he'll be most excited. And in that episode, he was telling us about a recent century race that he did, the Gorilla Century, where he was wearing pantyhose instead of leg warmers by recommendation, I think, of his father. So I guess he probably feels in good company now after hearing that. He might have felt embarrassed at that time, but man, if Christoph Strasser, his name Straps in German is about the same, maybe that'll give him even more inspiration now.
Very funny.
Yeah. Very interesting. So, Christoph, that's all nice to learn about you. Thanks for sharing all those tidbits of information. It's nice to just get to know you, even outside of cycling, but also, of course, with cycling, what helps you, what challenges you have, and those kinds of things. Now, I do want to turn our attention to the Race Across America route. So I have it here right with GPS in the browser. So those who aren't familiar, it goes through all of these states, including just skirting briefly through Pennsylvania. So 13 states. The route changes slightly each year depending on road closures, detours, anything like that. Now, in Ride with GPS, it never pulls up the correct elevation. Of course, it is just estimates based on the map. But according to the RAAM website, it's about 170,000 feet. And of course, it's usually between 3,000 to 3,100 miles. It goes through California, Arizona, skirts through Utah, Colorado, Kansas, Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, and then, of course, into Maryland. So, Christoph, I'd love to know and hear from you, looking at the RAAM route, going from one state to another, again, kind of, how you're feeling and what you're thinking at different points in the race. Now, we have covered some of that. We've talked about Kansas, we've talked about Colorado, the issues you had with breathing in your 2015 DNF. What challenges you might be facing, your pacing. Now, you talked about in the first half of the race, you tend to be feeling better than the second half, your position on the bike changes, those kinds of things. So it'd be interesting just to hear from you. And so for those who are watching and perhaps planning on doing the Race Across America, either as a solo racer or as in a relay team, what they can expect and perhaps what they can plan for. So Christoph, just starting over here, west coast of the United States, California, Southern California, all the way down in the south is Oceanside. That, of course, is where the starting line is. Looking at the map, for those who aren't familiar with the area, it starts over here. Of course, at sea level. And as you're coming through, you do go over Palomar Mountain as you make your way to Borrego, which is here. You can see Anza Borrego Desert State Park. And of course, this big descent here from about mile, looks like 70 or to 80 is the infamous glass elevator into Borrego right there, Borrego Springs. Tell us about this stretch. The first few miles, it's neutral. You're on the bike path there in Oceanside. And then you start getting out. There are some lights you have to stop through. And the interesting thing about your start is that typically, right, you're the last solo racer to start, right? So then as you get going, you start picking people up. Now in the neutral zone, you're not allowed to pass anybody until you get off of the bike path. So tell us about that first stretch and what it's like and how it looks, catching all the people that started ahead of you.
It's a very special part of the race because everybody is a bit nervous and everybody is meeting a lot of other riders. But you have to take care not to start out too fast because you're seeing somebody in front of you, you try to catch him, maybe you're overpacing, that's really dangerous. You have to find your rhythm, watch at your heart rate, at your power output, and just stick to the plan and not get too enthusiastic about overtaking other riders. But the landscape is so beautiful because it's not so hot in the beginning. When you start at the beach, it's cool, it's comfortable weather, and 3 hours later it becomes hotter and hotter and hotter, and then you have to take care not to overpace. And in the downhill section of the glass elevator, it's just it can be dangerous. So I'm always trying, when you watch the picture in the background, you see the city of Borrego Springs. Right. So this is my favorite place for the training ahead of RAAM. And during the training, I go up and down the glass elevator a few times. So I really see and ride the glass elevator a few times so that I can close my eyes and still do the downhill. And I feel much more safe when I'm downhilling the glass elevator in the race.
Yeah, fascinating. Of course, you do go there ahead of time. Last time we also talked about how you start switching to your liquid Ensure nutrition several days beforehand as well. So it is important to not just show up the day before the race and use that as your preparation. You don't want to acclimatize, get used to the heat there as well, since you will be spending, for most racers, perhaps 2 or 3 days in very extreme heats. So it's very interesting. Of course, you said at the beginning, it is very exciting. You want to be careful not to go too fast. But just to get some sense, generally in all of your Race Across Americas, How quickly or at which mile do you tend to pass everybody? And at which point are you at the front of the race?
It depends on the speed of the other riders, but one of our big we have a plan that after the downhill to the glass elevator, after Borrego Springs, there is a big stop sign on the road, and on that stop sign we change the bike. I'm starting with the climbing bike with the lighter one, and then I change to the time trial bike. And for me, in that moment, I try to focus on that the race is getting started now. The first 4 hours are just taking care, not going too fast, using your brain, not to overpace.
Yeah.
And then when I switch to the time trial bike, then I start the beast mode inside myself. I try to increase speed and I try to be really fast in the flats through the desert.
Fascinating. So if there's any chance for people, they need to use that first 4 hours to try to get as much of a head start on you as they can. Because after that, like you said, you go into beast mode and there's no stopping you at that point. Now,
but at the same time, when I change to the time trial bike, it gets really hot, so I'm not able to pedal as hard as I wish,
right.
because when it's in Celsius degrees, when it's 45 or 40 Celsius,
Right.
Heart rate goes up, so you're not able to push so hard than you would like to.
Yes, it's so true and something you have to account for. Now, in this photo, we could see you in a perfect aero position on your Shiv TT. Of course, your lifelong number is 377, the 377th participant, finisher. You've got a water bottle cage there at the back, very low position. And having to hold that for such a long time, as you were talking about earlier, it is a challenge. And you do even have to adjust that, especially as you get towards the end. But the heat is also a big issue. Of course, once you're going through the imperial sand dunes, you have to be careful about monitoring your heart rate and pacing yourself correctly. And it's true, I could just imagine a rookie at RAAM, perhaps they are very experienced even with ultra cycling, but having ridden in the heat and in the desert is another story. And like you said, you may be a strong rider, you are, but even you have to be careful and use your brain to think about, okay, not going too fast because there's such a long race ahead of you. So I think it is nice to hear from you. Now, of course, looking back here at the RAAM route, now we were just talking about starting Oceanside, going through to Borrego Springs. And then, of course, you go through the desert. Of course, if we look on the elevation chart, you could see it does flatten out. Now, there are rolling hills, small rolling hills. Of course, you pass through the town of Brawley. At that point, now it's already getting dark. And then you keep coming along until you reach here, Parker, Arizona. That's just when you cross the state line from California into Arizona. Now, where are you in the route when the sun starts rising, typically?
Somewhere between Parker and Salome. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. And it's always difficult because the crew has to go for a gas station, but in that time of the day, the gas station are not open yet. So it's always very important to have a plan with the fuel strategy of the pace car. So we always have an additional canister of fuel for that kind of case when the car needs to be fueled, but the gas station is still closed. And in some years we had to use it between Parker and Salome because we have been too fast for the gas stations to open.
Wow, that's very fascinating. Yeah, it's kind of a detail that you could take for granted. and not even realize you get out there and all of a sudden you get stuck because you don't have fuel for your car. Now,
During, no problem, because the car can go ahead and leave you alone. But when it's still night time, it's necessary that the car is behind you. So it's not allowed that the car goes ahead to the gas station.
yeah, that's right. For those who aren't familiar, it is a similar format to most multi-day events, but in the evening time, typically around sunset, you have to go into what they call the direct follow mode. So a vehicle must stay with you at all times. But during the daytime, especially for traffic reasons, that the car must be in the leapfrog mode. So it cannot stay behind you all the time. Except on some occasions, perhaps if it is a very dangerous stretch, I mean, for safety reasons, it is good to stay there for a short period. So going back to the map then, so you said, so just between Parker here and Salome,
Yeah.
it's about 350 miles there. Now this stretch from Parker to Hope, you could see that it starts picking up here on the elevation chart. So you're doing a climb from Parker. So you cross the state line, it's still very hot. It keeps getting hotter and hotter. Now, of course, from Hope all the way to Congress is a fast stretch, but very hot stretch. And just before you get to the famous climb. Now in Congress, Arizona, typically the bull shifters are there. They have the water pool there. Do you ever make use of that?
I would love to, but I never did spend time on jumping into the pool. I just, that's the next point where we have a planned bike exchange. So I'm jumping off the time trial bike and jumping onto the road bike for climbing. And my crew is sitting in the whirlpool, in the pool and having some relaxed minutes and some cool down, but I do not stop. I just take 20-second stop or 1 minute maximum and then go on.
Wow.
And in that point in Congress, you can understand why it is good when you have a fast start. Of course, you should not start out too fast, because then you're destroying yourself if you overpace yourself. But it's not good to be very slow and to be taking care of speed too much, because when you reach Congress in the middle of the day, you have the climb in the hottest temperature of the day. When you reach Congress in like sunrise in the very early morning hours, you can do the climb when it's still cool. So there is a benefit of having a fast first day and first night of the race.
Yeah, so true. But sheesh, for the rest of us, Christoph, it's not much of an option to go that fast.
I know, of course.
But it is a benefit to train and to strategize. Of course, you bring up an interesting subject, because those are the kinds of things you have to think about. It's not just about the biking, but also how quickly, whether or not you're a very fast rider, but even just planning your sleep break so that way you're on the bike for an extra hour or two rather than sleeping, because you do want to make sure you get to certain parts at a specific time where it could be cooler or not as hot, different conditions, or perhaps even if you're going down a descent where it's brighter rather than dark, so it's safer. So I'm glad that you did bring that up. Now, interestingly, Christoph, here is a photo. Actually, I want to show this one first. This one, looking at the file name, it's time station 34. What I did here, so you were able to splash your head in this pool. Now, of course, this isn't in Congress, and you could even tell from looking just in the background, you don't see all the desert of Arizona. Looking at the route book, I found time station 34 is actually Washington, Missouri. So if we look back on the route, I've put a pin here. So this is well over halfway in Missouri, Washington, Missouri. Thankfully,
yes, this is one of the very good time stations as well. There are always a lot of people, a lot of fans, and the people there are offering a pool like in Congress. And that's another great opportunity for the crew to relax a little bit, and also for me to have a short stop for cooling down, especially having washing your head for a few seconds and cooling down a little bit.
Yeah. It's so amazing how such a small thing that, I mean, in everyday life you could do it whenever you want to, whenever you feel like it, but in the Race Across America, just having a little pool filled with water can make such a big difference, and it can give you so much relief. And I'm sure even with all the fans out there, it gives you a lot of motivation, because a lot of the stretch, of course, I mean, it's a 3,000-mile route. That's a very long distance. For most of that, it's just you. And even with your crew, they're there behind you. Now, of course, they do have to do a good job as well to motivate you and to keep you encouraged. So, of course, it is very important for you to have a good crew to keep you motivated when you're out there, because there aren't fans lining the road like in the Tour de France or even a shorter race. So it is important to have some motivation and encouragement when you're out there. Now, this is a great photo, of course, having a team that is not embarrassed to make you laugh. Here's another great one. This one is time station 15 to 18.
Yeah, this one was on the Wolf Creek Pass, and it's one of my favorite pictures ever.
Huh.
It's such a nice photo. And this was in the year when we had the super fast road, the record of 7 days, 15 minutes. So we reached Wolf Creek Pass in the afternoon. It was very warm. It was very good weather, and it was bright, because in most other years I reached the Wolf Creek Pass at the night or in midnight or something, and it's very cold and a bit more boring going the uphill in the dark.
Yeah, so true. Talking about that, let's take a moment to just look at the route from a high level and to understand generally, looking at the route, which states are you typically riding through during the daytime and which ones during the nighttime?
In the first 2 or 3 days, it is mostly the same in all the years. And then towards the end of the race, it depends on how fast you are. But one of the big changes in my Race Across America years was the new route before Flagstaff, because in my first few years we have gone to Flagstaff on a much shorter way, and from 2016 there has been an additional I think 100 kilometers. It's a longer part of the route. It was added before Flagstaff, so we didn't go the shortest way to Flagstaff, but an additional a few miles. So since that time, it's impossible to reach Flagstaff in the afternoon. I'm always there during the night. But before that, it was like, going through from Congress to Flagstaff during the day, and then reaching Monument Valley in the sunrise. Or in my very fast years, I was crossing Monument Valley even in the night.
Wow.
But since the route change, all of that things changed a little bit.
Very interesting. So, of course, with the Race Across America, you're riding 24/7. So half the time in the night, half during the day. So in some ways, you haven't seen the whole course during the daytime. Is there a particular state that you would like to come back to in order to see or experience when there is actually light, somewhere that you've missed out on?
Yeah, luckily I have seen most of the routes in the day, because when I was training for RAAM 2 weeks before the start, I was there in 2009. I was doing like from one time station to the other, sleeping in a motel, and then on the next day going on. We've been until time station 7 to Prescott. And in the next year, we began our training journey in Prescott and did the training until Wolf Creek Pass. And a few years later, we have been in the Rocky Mountains for the pre-race training. And before my first record in 2013, I've been from Ohio to the finish. So the last 1,000 kilometers during a training ride in spring. So we have traveled to America for 1 week, or I think it was 10 days, to see all the routes during the day, because it helps you in your mind when you are familiar to the landscape, to the road surface, to the just to the environment, when you've seen it before, with a clear mind. Because especially in the end of the race, when you are tired and you are not concentrated anymore and you forget a lot of things which happened, it helps you a lot when you have been there in training to recognize the surroundings with a clear mind.
Yeah, that's so true and very interesting. Didn't know that. So it's great. And I think maybe unique to only a few RAAM racers that actually go out and be able to see the entire route on its own. I have seen the whole route as well in 2014. Before I did my RAAM, I rode the whole RAAM route over a longer period of time. And so I was able to ride mostly through the daytime on the route, and definitely is a beautiful course. Going back to there, now you were talking about a variety of things. We kind of left off around the Salome area. We were talking about Congress and the water pool there by the bull shifters just before the famous Yarnell grade, which can be very hot. Of course, you're climbing a lot if you look through the elevation chart all the way until you get to essentially Flagstaff, a beautiful area, Coconino National Forest. And of course, you hit Flagstaff, and that's kind of a nice milestone that you reach. After that, you get a very nice descent. I don't know if you remember that one, very wide road. You pick up a lot of speed on your way through the rolling hills past Tuba City and onwards towards Monument Valley. Anything in that stretch that you want to mention?
Yes, when you've just shown the map, you have seen the additional loop before Flagstaff. So in the year before, it was the shorter connection.
I see. Okay, right here, this section.
Well, now we go through Coconino Forest,
yes.
and in the early years we have gone through Sedona.
That's right. Yeah. Oh, interesting. So actually, in 2015, when I did RAAM, it was still going through Sedona.
Yes, it was.
And that is such a beautiful section because Sedona is right on the hillside. Wow, interesting.
Have you been there during the night, maybe?
Through Sedona?
Yes.
I have only been there through the daytime. Yeah, early morning. So I was actually able to enjoy that. Do you usually, in the past years, you only go through the nighttime?
No, I've gone there in the afternoon.
Okay.
Reached Flagstaff by sundown. Was
cool.
That's what I wanted to tell, that my crew chief in these years, he always told me our big goal is to reach Flagstaff before it's getting dark, because when you go the downhill from Flagstaff to Tuba City and there is still some sun, you have tailwind, and when it's getting dark, the wind stops, so you don't have wind anymore. And these are some specific details. I know that it doesn't help you when you reach Flagstaff in the night or in the morning, but when it's in the afternoon, it's definitely the best time of the day to do the downhill, because then you will enjoy tailwind every day. That's
fascinating.
One of the
yeah, so a lot of details that you have to figure out. Some of it you wouldn't know. You have to do quite a bit of research. And so as you mentioned, looking here, Flagstaff. So right after Flagstaff, you got a short little climb to get to the top there. But you're right, you get a very nice descent and you go very fast. And then from that point on, going into Tuba City, it's some rollers. Of course, then it does have a climb again as you head on towards Monument Valley. Of course, you also pass through Mexican Hat. There's a nice fast descent there too, short, steep one. It's very hot there as well. But it seems like you're riding through the evening time, actually, through a lot of this. As you mentioned, you try to get to Flagstaff around sunset. And then you skirt through Utah before you get into Colorado. Now I've dropped the pin here. That's Durango. That's the first cutoff point. And between Cortez, the first city that you kind of get to, it's kind of remote once you're in Monument Valley, coming through here all the way till you get to the first city, Cortez. And between here and here is a lot of climbing as well. And of course, you keep going, Pagosa Springs, South Fork. So the Wolf Creek Pass is actually in this section here. As you can see, it's the highest point in the RAAM route on the elevation chart. So tell us about Wolf Creek for you and your experience. I mean, it is one of the famous ones. It's not the only climb. It is the highest elevation, and it is a nice point. How are you feeling at that point in the race?
Yeah, you have just you've just gone forward on the route very fast. So we didn't talk about Monument Valley before reaching Wolf Creek Pass. This is definitely one of the most beautiful parts of the whole race across America.
And we have this nice photo of you
yes,
here.
There are so many nice pictures. This is the famous Forrest Gump point, when Forrest Gump turned around because he didn't want to go running anymore. Yeah, and it's so exciting to be there and to see the big mountains and everything. It's just great, and I'm always very thankful that I'm able to see that in real nature and not just only on pictures. But then, of course, Monument Valley is on very high altitude, so it's 2,000 meters high. You still get the feeling that the air is getting thinner. There is not enough oxygen anymore, so your body has a bit of stress. And during the day, it gets very hot again. And then when you reach the Rocky Mountains and the Wolf Creek Pass, there is a very fast change in temperature, because a few hours before you have the desert of Mexican Heads and doing the climb to Cortez, and the time station before, everything there is very hot, and you're gaining in altitude. And then you have the Rocky Mountains, and reaching Wolf Creek Pass in the night, it's 0 degrees Celsius. It's really very cold.
Wow.
Just a few hours after there has been 40 degrees. So that's really tough. And I did Wolf Creek Pass in training a few times, and it's not very tough when you're relaxed and when you have slept and everything. It's not so steep. It's very long, but it's not so steep. But in the race, of course, it's one of the toughest sections, because when I reached Wolf Creek Pass, I have only slept for maybe 40 minutes until there.
Wow, amazing.
You have endured so much climbing and changes in temperature, so it's really tough, and you have very thin air.
And that's already just about 1,000 miles into the race, so a third of the way there, and with very little sleep at all. Now, I do want to show a few other photos here. Of course, very nice ones for each year of RAAM. I'll start here with this one first. This one was from Cottonwood. Now, this is in Arizona, and this is before you get to Flagstaff. So to give people an idea of what the landscape looks like there through the Arizona desert. Of course, very well known, and also Monument Valley as well for the kind of reddish rocks.
Yeah, and this is one of the very beautiful downhills. It's right. Before Sedona, it's through Sharon. It's a mountain city, and it's a beautiful place, and the whole part in Arizona is so beautiful. It's very hot and not so comfortable, but just seeing the landscapes is great.
Yes, very beautiful all around, but Arizona is unique. Now, this one is on day 3. From looking at the trees, it looks like it must be in Colorado. Do you know exactly where this is?
Yes, this was on the ascent to the uphill section to Wolf Creek Pass. And
Mm,
in that year, there have been some wood fires in that area. So I was carrying the protection in the face.
right.
Yeah.
Yes, 2013. And then, of course, we were talking about riding at nighttime. This is also day 3. So going through Colorado then, I'd imagine. And again, we're talking about, how riding at nighttime and, there's no fans out there. It's just you and the lights shining on you from your follow vehicle there.
Yeah, and in this photo, you see that there was 2 riders just behind each other. So I
Ah,
think
okay.
I was overtaking another man just a few minutes before. I'm not sure who it
Right.
was because in 2012 I had a very bad start. I told you before I was slow in the first 2 days,
Hmm.
had problems, and then I was trying to make my way to the front of the race, and I was overtaking some other riders. And this is always a very special moment, a lot of motivation for you.
Hmm.
But when you are the slower one and another one overtakes you, it's not so good because it's a bit frustrating sometimes.
Yeah, that is true. Especially at that point in the race, you've already done hundreds of miles. Now, this one, again, you said day 2012, but this was day 3. But it looks like at the photo, you're still in the Monument Valley area. So not yet in Colorado in this year, but nowadays you typically are in the Colorado area already. Of course, you ride very fast from the beginning. So it's very fascinating. And so if we continue on in the route then where we left off, so we were talking also about Colorado. Of course, it is a very high altitude through the Rocky Mountains. Several passes earlier, we were talking about Levada, and then Cuchara as well. There's a lot of riding through there, and high altitudes can get very cold. Has it ever rained or hailed on you or something like that, or lightning storms when you're going up Wolf Creek or somewhere else in Colorado?
Luckily, not. I had a lot of bad weather in Kansas,
Hmm.
and until the finish in the second half of the race, like 2019 in my last RAAM, it was the year with the most rain, and it was raining 4 days in a row. It was just wet, 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 and cold all the time. It was so tough. The rain began in Kansas and Missouri, and it never ended until the finish line. It was really,
No, that
really,
that is miserable.
yeah,
2013, very nice photo to describe the terrible conditions. And it even
and
looks like perhaps there might be a lot of wind there from the look of how the rain is falling. And even your position on the bike looks like you're a little bit sideways there.
yeah, we had a terrible side wind. It was thunderstorm from the south, from the right side, and yeah, I I just told you that I never had really bad weather in the Rocky Mountains, but in Kansas there is, I think, I have always had thunderstorms since in Kansas until maybe 1 year. So there is a 80 or 90% chance to have thunderstorms when you ride through Kansas,
Mm,
especially in the afternoon and in the evening. But yeah, 1 or 2 hours of very hard rain is like what you should prepare for. And like we had last year, it was raining. It never stopped raining until the finish. It was very bad luck.
yeah, amazing. It's incredible the elements that you have to battle. Again, people don't consider that. They only think, okay, 3,000 miles of biking, that's not too bad. I could bike maybe 100 miles on the trainer every day, even maybe. And that is difficult in itself, just, keeping your legs spinning for that long, eating enough, and all those other challenges. But then the elements also are brutal, and you won't know until you experience it for yourself. So we're talking about Kansas, and you were saying from Kansas all the way to the East Coast, it was storming really bad, and sometimes there are very terrible storms. Could even be tornadoes, or at least tornado force winds going through there. Now, another great picture. So this one is an epic photo, but here's another one also. Looks like this one is also around the same area, day 5. See more rain. Now this one looks calmer, but still with all the rain, you could see your whole body, your shoes, your bib shorts, your top, everything getting soaked. Of course, your crew is sitting nicely in their van. They're nice and dry and warm, but you're out here battling those elements, and that makes it very difficult. And it can get very cold as well. It doesn't have to fall to 0 degrees to feel cold when you're wet. That's one of the challenges as well. So going back to the route now, so you go through Colorado, you made it through there. The highest elevations that you'll go through in the Race Across America, 7 to 10,000 feet. Then you go through Kansas, of course. Now it does get hot and humid in Kansas. It's flat as well. Then you pass into Missouri. From Missouri onwards, quite frankly, to the East Coast, all the way to the finish line, there's a lot of rolling hills. You can't really tell in the elevation chart when you're looking at all 3,000 miles, but give us an inside look from your perspective as you're going through Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, what the route is like for you and how you're feeling at those points.
It gets more difficult again because in Kansas it's you have wind and you have the elements and sometimes really tough rain, but it's not a lot of climbing. It's easy riding. Mentally, it can be very challenging because it's boring, but for your body you can have some easy hours maybe if you just let it roll on the flats. But in Missouri and Illinois and Ohio, there are up and downs all the time. So it's never really flat anymore. It's a lot of climbing, a lot of difficult sections. Mm-hmm. And additionally, in that state of RAAM, your mind starts to go a little bit crazy, and the lack of sleep begins to make problems more and more. So your physical fitness is very important for the first half of the race, and in the second half of the race, it gets more a mental challenge.
Yes, well said. And a whole nother challenge that people, again, will take for granted if they have no experience with multi-day events. Now, here's a photo. This is from day 5. It looks like you did find somebody else out there on the route. Tell us about who this is and what's going on here.
Yeah, that was the 2012 race when I had a very bad start and then catch Guido Schoch, who was the leader. And then we had we exchanged some words, and after that, I was in the lead for a few hours, and he was in the lead for a few hours. And he was a great cyclist in the mountains. So in that year, he was finally deciding the race and winning the race because I couldn't follow him in the Appalachian Mountains. He was shaving off my time and another few, I think it was 2 hours on the finish line. It was very close, but yeah, he was the fastest one in that year. Yeah, and the Appalachians are something I'm looking forward to when I ride through Missouri and Ohio, because Appalachians are, I like them. They are very steep and very challenging, but a bit more exciting than the mile before.
Yeah. You're getting towards the end as well, but also compared to, going through Arizona and Utah, Monument Valley, I mean, the landscape is beautiful, but also it's kind of bland, and there's a lot of rock and dry and heat and those kinds of things. Now, once you get into Kansas, you start getting some more of that green, a lot of the farmlands, the countryside, and then of course going through Missouri all the way to the East Coast, you start getting that very nice kind of American looking, those homes, the nice lawns, much more beautiful countryside. Now here's a photo. This is on this photo is on day 4, so you're probably around the Kansas. I think this is probably Kansas, maybe even heading towards Missouri. Now here on this road, you could see some rolling hills. Now those ones are small ones. Once you get into Missouri and onwards, you get some very, very large ones. And in the Appalachians, even before the major climbs, looking at the route, even before you get to the major climbs, there are a lot of other big rolling hills all throughout that area. which again, you can't tell on the elevation chart, doesn't do it justice, but it's not easy by any measure. Looking at the elevation, it may look like the first third or so through Colorado is the most difficult when it comes to climbing. But in the last half, especially with all those miles in your legs, and like you said, the mental fatigue, the tiredness, the confusion in your mind, it makes it even more difficult. So what else? I mean, because you're in that mental state there towards the end and kind of wrapping up here, I mean, are you aware, are you very aware of what is happening, everything that you're seeing and what you're passing through, and perhaps even the fans that are cheering you on from the little towns out there? Or what kind of mental state are you in?
Yeah, sleep deprivation is hard to explain if you have not experienced it yourself, because in the first 1 or 2 nights you have to try not to fall asleep, and you're tired and your eyes want to be closed. But when sleep deprivation really begins in the second half of the race, you are not falling asleep anymore. That's not a big problem, but you do not understand things, you do not remember things, you do not recognize things, you just don't know what's going on around you. And it's so important to have people and the crew telling you that everything is good, that they are here to help you, that you are in the race, that you are doing a good job and everything. So yeah, the crew becomes even more important to the end of the race. And having that little sleep as I do during RAAM, it would never be possible in an unsupported race without a crew. Yeah, and because of that, sometimes in the Appalachian Mountains, there is the one time station from the Yuri Robich Award from Cumberland to Hancock. It's considered the most difficult time station of the whole race because of the distance and climbing ratio. And there are 4 big climbs, and all of them look the same. They look similar. And when you are there in the race, I also have heard the story from other riders. A lot of riders believe that they're going up the same hill 4 times, and they think they are like going in a loop. And in fact, they go from west to east, but in their minds, they think that they are going in circles. Because, yeah, you just are too tired and too sleep deprived to realize what's going on.
Yeah, it's so true. So looking at some of the other photos again, we were talking about the storms, lightning, great photograph captured there. Of course, here's some of your crew cheering you along. We talked about riding during the nighttime. It's always a challenge, but very peaceful and beautiful. A lot to think about during those times. Of course, you've also had incredible crew members throughout all your RAAMs. Now, do you get a lot of the same guys coming out to support you each time, or are the crews different?
I think that having a good crew is one of the most important and one of the most underrated things in RAAM. Of course, everybody in the crew must be great in his job, even if maybe he's a mechanic, a physiotherapist, a sports doctor, a car driver. But on the other side, there must be a good spirit in the crew. Everybody must like each other. It's not possible that there are people in the crew who are selfish or who are aggressive or who are not patient or something. We have just talked about sleep deprivation and the tough night riding at the end of the race. And here again, a good crew is helping me so much, staying awake and keeping me encouraged and motivated. And yes, I try to have the same crew in the next year than I have done in the year before, because then I'm sure that everything is working in the crew. But of course, not every time people can take free time in their job or get the holiday needed. So sometimes there have to be new crew members, of course. But when I look back on my fastest year in RAAM 2014, I had a crew. When you add all the RAAM participations of each crew member, we had 42 RAAM experiences.
Wow.
Yeah,
Amazing.
so the crew chief, I think it was his 7th RAAM. For me, it was the 6th RAAM. And yeah, everything together, we had 42 RAAM participations. And this is, experience you cannot buy for any money.
Amazing. And it's so true. Of course, it explains a lot about why you were able to be so successful, as you're famous for saying also that a crew can't win the race for you, but they could definitely lose it for you. But also they could help you get to the finish. We talked a lot about the whole RAAM route and the challenges that you face going across America. And it's been very insightful to learn from you, and also to see all these nice photos that your crew has captured for you and your photographers. We're glad to be able to share in those experiences with you. What would you like to say to all your fans and also your supporters, your crew members?
Yeah, it's always, there is always the rider in the spotlight. You see the multi-time RAAM winner and the record-setting rider, but it's always an effort of the whole crew and the whole team. And even during the year, when it's just everything is about training and preparation, I need time. I need people who support me, and so it's always a team effort. And yeah, it's good to have positive people around you, and it's absolutely necessary. So always take care of who is in your crew, pick good people in the crew, make some crew training as well as mental preparation and physical training.
Well
That's
said.
what, that's what I wanted to say. And of course, thank you to all the people who support me. And also when a race is going on, people who send me some messages or comments or some encouraging things, that's really good. So for me to have the feeling of many people thinking of me, keeping their fingers crossed and sending some good vibes, that's really great. Thank you.
Yes. We're all glad to watch you, and we look forward to having you back here. Maybe 2021 won't happen due to the pandemic, but we look forward to the next time around. We're sure there'll be many more victories. Couple of short questions as we finish here on a fun note with audience questions. One from Simon Potter. He's just wondering if every condition was perfect and everything went to plan, and perhaps maybe there's no storms, there's no rain, maybe the heat in the desert was maybe in the low 100s throughout the whole time. How fast do you think you can complete RAAM now with the new course? I wonder, do you think you could break the 8 days again, even with the slightly different course?
Yes, I think, I'm sure. In 2018, I was very close. It was 8-day, 1 hour. And it was even faster than my 7-day, 22-hour ride because of the longer route. But yeah, the conditions, if they are perfect, sub 8-day is possible. But but conditions are never perfect. It's impossible to have perfect conditions. So it doesn't really make sense. Race Across America is not about having perfect conditions. It's about accepting bad conditions and making the best out of it.
Wow. Yeah. That's really well said, Christoph. Very true. That's what makes it what it is. Okay. Phil Fox asked a question, what's left to conquer? Now, just to remind folks, in the last episode, you were also talking about what you have planned for 2021, and you do plan to set another world record. Just mention that one more time. What is it?
My big goal for the future is to do a 24-hour record attempt and beat the 1,000 kilometer mark in 24 hours.
Wow.
That's something I definitely want to do. And regarding Race Across America, I'm not sure yet when I will be back. I have to wait and see the situation. And of course, have and look inside me to my motivation. Yeah, I will keep you updated in the future. I'm not sure yet.
Yes, sounds good. Okay, last question, Georgy Stoichev. He's wondering about your favorite or top workouts for building sustained power over a long time. Maybe you just give us at a high level, what is one that Georgie could do? What's a fun, hard one, the hardest one you can give to give Georgie a bit of a workout?
Yeah, the hard workouts are not fun. That's the problem. Yeah, I tried to ride at about 80% of my FTP for 5, 6, or 7 hours. This is really, really tough, and it will take you some days to recover from that. But doing that once a month or something can be a good exercise. Yeah.
Yes, sounds like a lot of nice torture. I mean, good workout to make you strong. So, Georgie, we'll look forward to seeing your Strava upload when you do that effort. You can call that the Christoph workout. Well, Christoph, it has been a great pleasure to have you again on the show. It's been a lot of fun to talk about what you're most well known for, your Race Across Americas. Of course, we wish you all the best for your upcoming season. I know you're busy starting with all your training, and I hope you have a happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and we look forward to seeing all of your races and following your journey in 2021. And of course, then having you back on the show to celebrate all of your successes and also all the challenges that you might face, because I know there's a lot of lessons. You shared a lot with us. So thanks again, Christoph. We hope to see you again in the new year.
Thank you so much. Have a great day. Goodbye.
All right, everyone at home watching, thank you so much for tuning in. Hope you learned a lot between this episode and the last one. Again, episode number 37. Check it out. There's so much information, a wealth of knowledge that Christoph has shared with all of us. As he's mentioned, he has so much experience with the Race Across America, many other ultra races, which we haven't yet been able to cover. But follow him on Instagram, on Facebook, check out his website. He has so much great content out there and he shares so freely. So if you're looking to do an ultra event yourself, looking to compete in the Race Across America, learn from the only 6-time champion himself. And until next episode, everyone, keep spinning ultra.